It's okay, it's all good. Ari will edit it later. Let's talk a little bit about Parshas Noach and Parshas Noach. Okay, so I don't really know where to start, so I'm just going to start with what Rav Yossi said in shul today. Oh, when did he sneak in over here? That's funny. Welcome. Someone give him a bowl of cholent or something. Make sure you get the salt. I made the cholent virtually. Cholent should not be made virtually. Let's continue. So, Rav Yossi said in shul after davening today a beautiful thought from the Baal Shem Tov. I don't think anyone was here aside for Yisrael. Excuse me, Moshe, you were not there today. It's a beautiful thought. We all know the word teva means an ark. Noah's ark. Noah sat there building ark. Noah was the world's worst kiruv professional ever. Noah spent 100 plus years trying to do kiruv. 100 plus years, 100 plus days, trying to do kiruv as he built the teva. And he was, how many years was it in total? 120 years? 120 years, I was right the first time. And how many people did he convince to go into the teva with him? 0. So he was the world's worst kiruv professional. Who won? He convinced himself?
Oh.
He convinced to hang on from the backwards. Okay. But the word teva, says the Baal Shem Tov, famously, apparently, I guess that's the way it works. Whenever the Baal Shem Tov says something, it becomes famous. Says the Baal Shem Tov, the word teva means a word. Teva means a word. Says the Baal Shem, and afterwards I saw this Sfas Emes says the same, that how do you save yourself from the raging waters outside, from the incredible world that we live in, is with the teva of Torah, a little bit of Torah, a little bit of tefillah. And I saw a beautiful story. There was a Yid in the concentration camps that told the Tolna Rebbe the following story. I do not know which Tolna Rebbe, for all our Tolna Hasidim over here. You could verify that with the Rebbes afterwards. And a man told the Rebbe that he misses being in the camps. A little bit of a strange thing to say. And the Rebbe says to him, like, what do you miss about the camps exactly? So he said when he was in the camps, one day he was walking around and he saw a piece of paper with Hebrew lettering blowing around on the ground. So he went down and he picked it up and it was a page of a Gemara. He said it was a Bechayris. That was the way I heard the story. He folded it up and he put it in his pocket. Late that night, everyone was sleeping, he took out his Gemara and he started learning it. And every night, that's what he would do. For a few moments every night, he would take out this page of Gemara and he would, I was like, I don't have a bell in this house, I don't think. I got it, it's all good. It's good, it's important, you could keep that on. And every night for a few moments, he would take out the Gemara and he would learn a little bit. And he said he misses that immersion that he would have for those few moments in his Gemara. That when he was in the insanity of the Holocaust, in the world's worst, that we can't even fathom conditions, when he would take out the piece of Gemara, he had such a otherworldly feeling of connection to that piece of Gemara that he's never felt since he left the camps. And he says, that feeling that I had because of when you're in such a low, terrible place and you connect to such an incredible light, he says, that feeling I've never had again in my life. And for that, at some level, I miss being in the camps. That is someone who immerses themselves in the teva of Torah. And although, I guess we should say, fortunately, we're not there, but at some level, I think we could relate a little bit to immersing yourself a little bit, sometimes. Who told me recently that he gets lost in it? Oh, you were telling me about your uncle, that he gets lost in his Sfarim. He gets lost in his Sfarim. I sometimes get lost looking for a sefer. I don't think I get lost in my Sfarim, but halavai. But it is a beautiful thought that in the teva of Torah, sometimes, you just sit back, you have time, you're not rushed, maybe on a Friday night, and you just, enjoy immersing yourself in the Torah. That's one of the, easiest or greatest ways to walk into the teva and thereby save ourselves from the world around us. But I like to focus at the end of the story. What happened at the end of the story? The Mabul stops. Noach finally wants to leave the teva, and he sends out the Yoina, the dove. The dove goes out time number 1, circles and comes back. The dove goes out time number 2 and brings back, what did he bring back? An Ali Zayas. Wonderful. We have one Balkari amongst us. For the rest of us, we're still holding in our pre-Renee understanding of Chumash, which, by the way, as a Hakdama to Parshas, a Rebbe of mine one time said, and it's a painful line, but it's a line that we could take to heart, that unfortunately our understanding of Chumash is what we learned in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And maybe as we grow up, we should say, you know what? Maybe I should learn a little Chumash. Open up a Medrash, open up anything. Everything is in English. And what's amazing is we blow our own minds when we're like, oh my gosh, that really happened? Is that Medrash? Is that Pshat? And it's fascinating. It's beautiful. So that's just, one of the ways to get lost, as we said, in the Teva of Torah, a word of Torah. But the raven, the dove, comes back. Vihine ale zayis taraf befiyah. It's holding an ale zayis. Klal Yisrael is compared to a yoina. Where is Klal Yisrael compared to a yoina? In Shir HaShirim, for all those who have the schus to say it before Shabbos. Definitely a calming thing to do, although I don't know how many people actually get to that point. One of the greatest things of davening Friday night at the Kaisel, if anyone's ever done it, is you get to see real Jews. There are these people. I used to go, I'll be honest, I would go to daven early Shabbos. So it's the summer. Shabbos is like 8 o'clock, but you can make Shabbos already from Plag at, 6 o'clock. So I would get there a few minutes before Plag. No, it's probably a little bit later, probably closer to 6:30, 7 o'clock.
And then take the bus back?
And I would, no, Chas Shalom. I would accept Shabbos. I would daven Mincha. I would accept Shabbos. And then I would daven Kabbalah Shabbos. Then I would walk home. I would start my Suda. And then I would go daven Me'erev in Shul, because I had a Shul literally in my backyard. And then I would finish my meal afterwards. Interesting, la halacha, why I did that. But either way, what's the point of my story? So I'm very good. So I'm there. That's pretty good company. So I'm there. I think that's the first time I was in the company of the Rebbeim in Philadelphia, Baruch Hashem. L'chaim to that zlos. So I'm there making early Shabbos, and you have these real Yerushalmis showing up for Shabbos, which is in an hour and a half. And like, what are you doing for the next hour and a half? They're sitting down, they're saying Shir HaShirim, they open a cloth, and they just sit there, and then they say Tillim, and then come out. Like, that's like a real Jew. And the truth is, the way that they welcome Shabbos is a real Kabbalah Shabbos. Calm and peaceful. Okay, we don't know what's going on at home. The 52 kids killing each other as Abba is enjoying his Shir HaShirim at the Kaisel. Okay, but either way, there's what to be beautiful of everything. Is someone at the door? I just heard something move over there. It's open, right? Is it open? It's open. Okay, good. So, Klal Yisrael in Shir HaShirim is equated to, I'm hearing things again? Okay. You can leave it open. I'm sorry. Klal Yisrael in Shir HaShirim is equated to a yoina. Says the pasuk in Shir HaShirim, Hine yafa einayich, your eyes are like a dove. Your eyes are like a dove. And what's very interesting about this pasuk is that the Medrash says that Shir HaShirim is the most holy of all of the texts. I'm reading it in English, I'll read you in Hebrew. Kol haksuvim kodesh, v'shir hashirim kodesh hakadashim. Is there anyone here that says Shir HaShirim? Anyone that tries? Anyone that's ever said Shir HaShirim? Oh, there you go. Okay, good. So, Shir HaShirim is...
When do you lane it?
Yeah, okay. Shir HaShirim is kodesh hakadashim. And says Shir HaShirim, Hashem praises Klal Yisrael that we're like a dove. Now, what is so special about a dove that Klal Yisrael? And for a few moments, I would like to discuss this relationship between the dove and Klal Yisrael, and ultimately the olive, and hopefully take these three entities called dove, called olives, called Klal Yisrael, and walk away with a beautiful lesson in a few moments. So why is Klal Yisrael equated to the dove? There's three things about a dove that Klal Yisrael are equated to, says the Medrash. Number one, a dove is the most loyal of all animals. That's what the Medrash says. The dove will never leave its mate. The dove will always protect its children. Klal Yisrael is loyal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Number two, if a dove comes home and finds that its house is destroyed, other animals will be distraught and won't know what to do with themselves. The dove picks itself up, builds a new house, finds a new dwelling, no problem. Klal Yisrael, we face adversity with pride. And number three is a dove is very vulnerable. It says the Medrash, a dove only has its wings to protect itself. Klal Yisrael, whatever this means, only only has the mitzvahs to protect itself. So Klal Yisrael is equated to a dove in these wonderful traits that we're very loyal, that we know how to get back up when we're knocked down, and even though we're vulnerable, we're able to handle the balance. But the question is, what does this have to do with an olive? Okay, what are olives? Anyone here eat olives? Anyone? Yeah. So the Gemara in Harius teaches us, that if you eat olives, you forget your Torah. I was like, oh, that's why. Ah, very good. But if you eat olive oil, beautiful, says the Gemara, you remember your Torah. What's pshat? What's pshat? Oh, very good. Is that you work it through. Is that when you take the raw, vulnerable olive, you forget your Torah. You beat that olive to its pulp. The oil is good for you. So every time we eat the olives and we have that oil on it, or we just drink the oil, or we put the oil on the bread, this is what we're remembering. So Noach,
they open a jar or can.
Yeah.
Pour in oil.
Just so that, very good.
And I've never seen it till I got married.
Very good. Okay, but now you do it.
First time he told me that.
He remembers the stuff.
Thought he fell off the moon. There you go. But no. So it's the oil is that which is beaten, and then it comes out as it helps your memory. So now can we just think about Noach for a moment. Noach is in this teva. And a big tzaddik. You can't. I don't think No, you know the problem with the only problem with the song. I happen to love the song. FYI, I love the song. I ask my kids, I love the song. Only problem is there's like 4,000 midrashim at the beginning of this week's parasha that we just can't talk about anymore because it's Noach is a big tzaddik, and every shot about Noach is a big tzaddik, and once you say Noach is a big tzaddik, everyone's singing Noach is a big tzaddik, and therefore how can we talk about Noach is a big tzaddik? So I actually heard someone speaking, and he by accident he kept on saying big tzaddik, because he just was used to saying it. So he was trying to say Noach is a tzaddik, but he kept saying Noach is a big tzaddik. Excuse me, he's a tzaddik. He's a big tzaddik also. But anyways, maybe at the end we'll give one shot at Noach is a big tzaddik just to be Yitzhak, because if not, I don't think it's called a shir in Parshas Noach. But imagine Noach is in the teva, the whole world was just destroyed, and he's about to leave the teva. The waters are subsiding. What feelings do you think Noach is feeling right now? Remember, Noach is the world's worst kiruv professional. He's about to be the only person in the world and have to rebuild the whole world. So maybe for like an Avram Avinu, he could charismatic, he could do whatever, great, I'll rebuild the world. For a Noach, so Noach's in the teva, sends out this raven, it comes back. Why is it holding this olive branch? It's teaching Noach, you're feeling a little bit like you can't do it, you're feeling a little bit destroyed, you're feeling a little bit depressed, you're feeling a little bit crushed. That's the message of the olive oil. You're the yoina and the olive oil, you put the two things together. Like we said, the yoina is this loyal, it's always able to rebuild itself. And then the olive oil teaches us what? That even when it's crushed, not even when it's crushed, the crushing is what makes the oil. And of course, the simple mashal, which I'm sure we've all heard of millions of times, is when one works out, and the way I'll play it out a little bit differently, I think that we more usually heard it. If a Martian would come down to this world and walk into a gym, what would the Martian think? What would the alien think if he walks into a gym? You see some person, first he hears what's going on inside, and it sounds like someone's like, it sounds like, the sounds that's going on. The guy's like dying as he's trying to lift weights. And then he sees a person at his own force going and lifting weights and adding more weight and more weight and more weight. So the alien would say, Chacham, what are you doing? You're in so much pain. Let's take off all the weights. And the alien comes and it takes off all the weights. Says, oh, look at that. It's nice and easy. Obviously, that's ridiculous, because the whole purpose of lifting the weights is to build the muscle. The whole purpose of the nisyonis is to make us great. So it's not in spite of the olives being crushed. It's because that is the whole purpose. The Mesil Sisharim, for those who are learning together with us, teaches us that the ikar reason we're on this world is la'amoid b'nisayon. I think it gives us a little bit of a different perspective into what we're doing. Not that the olives we really would like olives. They got crushed, so we'll eat olive oil. The message to Noach is, as you're rebuilding the world, is the exact opposite. Is the crushing is the integral ingredient. Because that's what's going to build your muscle, and that is what's going to make you great. And that's, I think, a very simple message that I really think we could all take into our lives is that when something goes wrong, there's always ups and downs, good days and bad days. There's always things that are easy and things that are difficult. Is the message of the raven coming back to Noach with the Ali Zayis, remembering the olives, teaching us that the crushing is the message. One second.
It was the raven or the...
Excuse me, the dove. I keep on saying raven, excuse me. The dove, thank you. The dove bringing back the olive, teaching us that the crushing is the purpose. So when we have a bad day, instead of being oi, obviously this is an impossible thing to think, we should be so happy. I have another test that I could withstand. I have another reason that I could push myself to get up even though I don't feel like it. We should be happy because this is why we're here. Just like that person lifting weights, no one's going to say, oh, take off all the weights. No, because then you're not going to have any muscle. The whole purpose is the nisyanis, and that's the lesson of the olives versus the olive oil that we should cherish. So let's be honest, we're not going to cherish the nisyanis and we're not going to be happy when something goes wrong. But at the very least, that once it goes wrong, and when we're down, and when we're feeling distraught, and when we're feeling, how could I do this? When we remember the olive oil, when we remember that this is the whole purpose, how to get there, the only way to remember the Torah is to crush the olive. Learning Torah is difficult, correct, but that's the only way to do it. If it's not difficult, then it just goes in one ear and out the other. Then we'll be able to somehow cope with all the nisyanis. And I'd like to leave with one final idea, is that Noach spent all this time taking care of all the animals. And what did he do with the animals after he came out of the teva? And then he took all the kosher animals and he slaughtered them. Says the Ramban, this is the ultimate carbon, the ultimate sacrifice. And the Ramban is medayik from the Psukim, I think Rav Hirsch says the same, that this was why Hashem promised he'll never bring the Mabul again. Imagine, you sat there tending to these animals day and night, right? We all know the medrash that the lion bit Noach because he didn't feed its food properly. So you're tending to the animals day and night, and you take that very animal and you shecht it as a carbon. So the lesson to us, of course, is that what is a carbon? What is a sacrifice? Is that when something that we worked on, something that is difficult to us, and we give that to Hashem, that's the ultimate nisayan, and that's the greatest, right? The bikurim, the first fruits, you give that. Why the first fruits? Because that's the most difficult, the most cherished. So when we have the nisyanis, and when we're trying to do things that are very difficult, and we can't do them, when we realize that A, this is the purpose is the crushing, and B, that this is going to be the greatest way to serve Hashem, ultimately we'll be able to do like the Baal Shem Tov taught us. We'll be able to immerse ourselves in that teva of Torah or tefillah, says the Sfas Emes. Doesn't have to be Torah. Sfas Emes says the same thing. It's a teva. Words. What are words? That we daven. You immerse yourself in a good tefillah. You get lost. What happens? That surrounds ourselves from all the outside elements. And Amir Hashem. Sorry, I was supposed to end off with the Noach as a big tzaddik. Excuse me. So the Maram Mintz says, we'll end with the Noach as a big tzaddik. That what's Noach? We all know the first Rashi. Some say Noach liganai for good, and some say for bad. Right? Some say l'shvach, some say liganai because he was only a tzaddik in his generation, but he wasn't a tzaddik in other generations. Ask the Maram Mintz. That's not such a nice thing to do. Why do we have to bash Noach? He was a tzaddik. Okay, so it wasn't the best tzaddik. What's yesh darshan liganai? Why would the medrash do that? Why would Chazal hone in and point out? By the way, no. Don't think you're so good. You're only so good because everyone else around you. You think you're so good because you're hanging out with those guys. But if you would hang out with them, you would be the worst. Why would the medrash tell us that? It's so not nice. Says what? No, it's not that it's not true. But the medrash, what's it doing? So the Maram Mintz learns from here an incredible lesson. Noach was saved, says the Maram Mintz, because he was the only one that was doing what was right. And says the Maram Mintz, ultimately, why is the Mashiach going to come? Not because we're really going to be Zeicha. This is the Maram Mintz's take on it. But because even amidst all the insanity, you still were able to be a tzaddik. It's true. Maybe we're not on the level that if we were 50 years ago, if we were 100 years ago, right? We hear all the stories, you wouldn't have been able to do anything, and they're much better than you. And it's true. Yesh darshan liganai. It's okay. But ultimately, who was saved? Noach was saved. Because at the end of the day, even though it was liganai, it's okay. you're going to be saved. So says the Mramins, yes, Noach was a big tzaddik. And that's why he was saved. And that's the chizik for all of us, is that, yeah, maybe people will tell us, you're not as great as they were 50 years ago, and they learned like this, and they davened like that, and they did mitzvahs like this, and, people want to push us down and push us down and push us down. I don't know if that's necessarily what we get. Maybe we sometimes get the opposite. But either way, I'm sure there has been times that we've been told that. Yesh darshim l'genai. We have to remember? We remember the Ramins. We remember it's true. But who is the one that ultimately was pulled into the teva and saved? It's going to be us. Where is the Mashiach ultimately going to come from? From those that are Yesh darshim l'genai, Mirza Hashem. Stopped?